Welcome to Popternative, where we dive into topical discussions from the worlds of pop culture, social media, and sports. Here is your host, Peter Remoliotis, aka PD Beats.
PD Beats here from Popternative, speaking to Charlie Weber about Panama, which is going to be available March 18th. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
First thing that kind of comes to mind when I'm watching this film is the amazing people you got to work with on this. I mean, this is stacked.
It's stacked, and it's why, I couldn't, when they called me to do it, I was just like, without question, I'm doing this. Mel Gibson's been a presence my whole life, and then Cole Hauser's a guy I've looked up to my whole career and couldn't wait to work with him.
Is it a cool thing, too, where, like, you were on, like, a show that had an amazing run with How to Get Away with Murder? He's kind of doing the hype with now Yellowstone. That's a cool kind of little thing that you got similarities, right?
Yeah, we had a lot in common. It was nice to, he was on a break from his show. My show had just ended, and it was nice to come and do a movie together.
Absolutely. Watching this, it's very fast paced. There's kind of not a lot of time to kind of decipher a lot of things at times. Is that I'm sure that's a fun project to kind of do. And it was a lot different than other projects you've done in the past. What was that like working on a fast paced film like that?
Agreed. That's a perfect way to put it. It's really fast paced, and I think it was just really fun to shoot because we shot it in a pretty condensed time frame, and it was just it was go, and it was people that were ready to do that. And so filming it kind of felt like the final product of how fast it all moved. But it was just really cool to be part of a fast paced action movie. But it takes place in the 80s, and it felt and does feel like an 80s action movie, sort of that just fast paced from beginning to end.
It's so great that you say that because I've been doing a lot of interviews about a lot of TV shows and movies that a big like trend right now is like genre bending, right? A lot of films and movies that are not TV shows that aren't really staying in the box. Like it's a lot of different things. I mean, this one is pretty clear cut. Like this, Panama knows what it's trying to be.
We do. Yeah, no. And that's what I love that about the script. It's not trying to be anything but what it is. It is an 80s action movie.
Yeah, pretty much. Charlie Weber's a storyteller. That's what you do. That's your profession. Yeah. You know what I mean? A lot of people say acting, but that's what you do. What excites you specifically about storytelling?
I think storytelling in general is, obviously I love it, but I always like to see specifically how a character fits into telling that story. Like in this movie, my character kind of facilitates 100 different storylines that all kind of come together without having to actually be present at every moment. And I think there's something very cool about that. And so for me, it's about where do I fit in telling the story? Like, what's my specific point of view?
You have played characters in the past and present with Panama that are a slippery slope in terms of what's the deal with this character? Like, is he a bad guy? Is he a good guy?
Those are the funnest parts. It's interesting. I don't think there's any good guys or bad guys because everybody, complicated people and every human being is complicated and there are many layers to every situation. And I like it when we kind of expose that no one's just this one thing.
Yeah, absolutely. But this one, it's a little bit, I'm not going to go into spoilers, but Sure. Like there's protagonists and antagonists. It's kind of, you find out where your character kind of stands.
He is what he is. And, he's out, he has an agenda of his own. I think he falls into some traps of the human experience throughout the course of the film.
Oh, you've played characters like that in other things specifically.
Yeah. I've gotten pretty good at it. Yeah. I've gotten pretty good at playing guys who get overcome by
the How to Get Away with Murder fans just lost their minds on a lot of things that your character did on that. So.
Yeah. Well, that was a very fun, very interesting exploration of a man, and that was interesting. To play that character for that long was quite an experience. Where it's the opposite of this movie, Panama, where we were in and we were out.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
We met up, shot this movie. Everybody knew who they were, and we did it.
I find it very interesting, too, because, and this is definitely something that you can kind of tie into working on Panama, because you work on a show like How to Get Away with Murder, and it has such an amazing cast, and it has people that have worked on other amazing projects in the past, Viola Davis. You have, people that have worked on shows like Orange is the New Black, so you have that. And does it come to mind in terms of, like, a learning experience as well, because you're working with all these amazing people. You can all kind of bounce ideas off. And the same thing with this film as well. Like, do you ever look at it that way? I'm curious about that.
Yeah, definitely. Especially with an ensemble like Murder, you have this incredible group of actors all coming from different places. Some have a little more experience, some less, but even the younger people on the show were so talented. And so there was a value in sort of their new experience and what they had to say about things. Then you have Viola Davis, which is this completely other thing,
Yeah.
which is almost unreal to work with someone that closely for that long. And so it's all a learning experience. And then, yes, on Panama, I mean, I got these two guys in front of me, and we would just sit around and talk and break down a scene and then shoot it.
Because I find like, you've been doing this for quite some time, but I feel like the learning experiences will never stop with any project.
Stops.
Yeah, never.
Never stops. Never stops. It's always something new. There's always new energy, new people. And that's why I always try to move around and work with new people, because you always learn something.
Where was Panama shot? Where'd you film this movie?
We shot that in Puerto Rico, San Juan, Puerto Rico.
Was it a long shoot, or was it? But you said no. It was like in and out.
It was quick. Right? Yeah. It was really quick. It all was set up. We had a great script, great people in place. We all just kind of met up and got it done.
So is that a little bit of an overwhelming kind of situation for you and the cast, where like there isn't that much time to waste, so you kind of go in there? Like does that come to mind at all?
It does, but I think with a script like this, I think there's a value to that, where we don't have too much time to think. We all have our character. We know how we fit in, and like you said, it's not genre bending. We have this 80s action movie, great script, great director. No, he knows what he's doing. We know what we're doing. So it was just easy.
The 80s action, like you said, the whodunit kind of murder, those have been around for a while. I find it interesting too, because you look at a lot of other projects as well, comic book culture, geek culture, and you look at horror films. I'm just curious about that, because when I was growing up, I loved those like movies, but they weren't like as popular as they are now. You know what I mean? And now they're like popular culture, so to speak, mainstream. You know what I mean?
Right.
Don't you find it's kind of weird that like comic book culture, geek culture, like I used to get made fun of for wearing like Spider-Man shirts.
Yeah, well, that's the shift of culture and nostalgia, and people who have been, we grew up with all that stuff, and now we're the adults. So now we're representing these things, and people are like, oh, this is actually really cool.
And these films by like a landslide are like the biggest movies on the planet. Like when a comic movie comes out,
it's a guaranteed $1 billion. It's wild. It's so wild.
I also think I'm curious about this, because people like the fast-paced component to films, and they're going to get that with Panama, but there is kind of like dialogue and a lot of things that happen with the characters in this film. But I'm curious, is it safe to say that, the whole purpose of a movie like Panama also just kind of get you on the edge of your seat and kind of have all those action sequences, and then the dialogue is kind of just there? Do you agree with me that a little bit?
Yeah, it's interesting, because in this script there is a really kind of cool story at the core of it, and Cole really wrote this really great fine line of what that was, and he gives a really sort of measured performance in the midst of all this action that I think is really, really cool.
Oh, absolutely. Has it hit you that it's finally coming out? Like, it's pretty crazy. Like, you work on films, you work on other projects. It's going to be out on the 18th. It's pretty exciting.
It's really exciting, and it is so strange, being on the show for all those years, and then having sort of, almost this immediacy to, we're shooting an episode, it comes out a few weeks later, and we're moving really, really fast. Whereas I've been just doing kind of some movies lately, and it was really cool to spend about a year and a half making a few movies, and then now they're like all coming out. And so I got, so Panama's coming out, and some other movies I did are all kind of coming out. So it's a different experience to put in all this work and then become so separated from it. And then, we shot this movie, almost a year and a half ago.
I know.
At least a year ago.
And let's be honest, there's a misconception where people think that like actors know what's going on. You know what I mean?
It's not true. It's not true. Like, actors don't have a whole lot of idea of what's going on ever.
Well, no, because
at least speaking for myself.
Well, no, because
I never know what's going on.
I feel like it's one of those things where you go work on projects. Like, I just interviewed an actor recently for a show, and he has like another show coming up the week after, and he's like, I did not like plan for this at all.
Oh, no, never. You never know what's going to happen. And that's kind of the cool adventure of it all. But yeah, like with shooting this movie, it could have come out 3 months later. It could have come out 10 months later. You just never know how those things are going to come out. Like when I found out it was coming out on this day, I was like, oh, cool. I can't wait. And then another movie's coming out this time, and you do things like this. And there's always something new every day.
Oh, absolutely. Has it hit you that shows and projects that you worked on in the past, like Murder, don't really have a shelf life because of the kind of resurfacing of clips and streaming services? Like, it's pretty cool.
It's really cool. And I was also part of a show back in the day, not to date myself, but it was just the 25th anniversary of Vampire Slayer.
Yeah.
And I did a season of that show when I was a kid. Well, a kid to me, but it's wild to think about how far back it all goes. But that show, because of streaming and Murder, they're just always in the zeitgeist. They're just relevant.
Oh, absolutely. It's so crazy to see how a lot of those shows, like Murder, is never going away. Like it isn't. And
yeah, it'll always be a thing. And so many people watched it during this lockdown we all just experienced together. It was so popular when it was on, which I was so proud of. But then this whole new group of people, just endless numbers of people, watched it because we didn't have anywhere to be. We didn't have anything else to do. And so to come out of this lockdown and be back out in the world and have this whole new group of people having had that experience has been really cool.
I think the coolest thing about that show, before we wrap up, is people have experienced that show in two different ways. They're the people that watched it weekly episodes, and then there are the people that just binged it.
If someone has binged that show, I just hope they're okay. I hope they're okay.
That's a lot. Yeah,
that's a lot. That's a lot.
Absolutely. Charlie, this was a blast. Thank you so much for coming on Popternative.
Oh, man, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Panama's going to be available March 18th, so they're going to be able to check that out. And where can people follow you on social media to keep up to date with everything? Instagram probably is the best bet?
Instagram, and I keep up with it a little bit, but I do post occasionally on Instagram at the Charlie Weber.
Amazing. Well, this has been Popternative, youtube.com/Popternative for previous episodes. Charlie Weber stars in Panama alongside Mel Gibson, Cole Hauser, and a lot of amazing other people. You can check that out March 18th. Until next time, this is Charlie Weber and Petey Beats signing off.
Thank you for tuning in to Popternative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popternative on YouTube. Be sure to like Popternative on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.
This has been an Autograph Communications production.